The fluorescent lights of Portland Police Department's Central Precinct hummed softly as Officer James Chen completed his nightly rounds. At 42, he had perfected the art of staying alert during the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. His polished boots made gentle tapping sounds against the freshly waxed floors as he moved through the building's winding corridors. Tonight felt different somehow. The autumn air sneaking through the building's old windows carried a hint of anticipation, like the moments before a storm breaks. Chen paused near the water cooler, adjusting his collar as he glanced at his watch. 2:47 a.m. The lost and found room beckoned from down the hall, its door slightly ajar. Something about the sliver of light escaping through the gap caught his attention. In 15 years on the force, Chen had developed an instinct for details that seemed out of place, and this definitely qualified. Approaching cautiously, he pushed the door open wider. The room looked exactly as it always did. Metal shelves lined with forgotten umbrellas, old phones, and various personal items waiting to be claimed. Except for one thing. Sitting perfectly centered on the middle shelf was an elegant black briefcase he'd never seen before. The leather appeared expensive, its surface catching the light like still water. A golden government seal adorned one corner, partially visible beneath the fluorescent glow. "That's strange," Chen muttered, checking the logbook by the door. No new entries for the past 48 hours. Protocol dictated that all items had to be logged immediately upon arrival, no exceptions. Moving closer, he noticed more unusual details. The briefcase showed no signs of wear or age, no scuffs on the corners, no scratches on the hardware. It looked fresh from the factory or perhaps carefully maintained. The combination locks on either side gleamed like new coins. Chen reached for his radio, then hesitated. What exactly would he report? A suspiciously clean briefcase. He could already imagine the good-natured ribbing from his colleagues about getting spooked by high-end luggage. The air conditioning kicked on, stirring a few papers on the nearby desk. Chen noticed a small detail he'd missed before. Tiny letters engraved beneath the government seal. FBID 7739. His heart rate quickened. FBI Director's Office. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the keypad. He could call it in, wait for proper authorization, possibly spend hours explaining why he was suspicious of a briefcase. Meanwhile, if something time-sensitive waited inside, a memory surfaced from his rookie years. His training officer's voice, clear as day. Sometimes the biggest mistakes come from waiting too long to act. Trust your gut, but use your head. Chen checked his watch again. 2:53 a.m. The graveyard shift would continue for another 4 hours, and the day shift wouldn't arrive until 7. Whatever this was, he had time to think it through. He circled the briefcase slowly, studying it from every angle. No signs of tampering, no wires, no suspicious residues. Just perfectly maintained leather and pristine hardware, sitting in a place it had no business being. The combination locks drew his attention again. 5 digits each, standard government issue. Chen had worked enough joint operations to recognize the style. His fingers traced the cool metal numbers, mind racing through possibilities. The precinct's security cameras whirred softly in their corners, faithful witnesses to whatever choice he was about to make. Chen straightened his shoulders, years of training and experience culminating in this moment. Well, he whispered to the empty room, sometimes the right thing starts with a risk. His fingers moved toward the first combination lock, each motion deliberate and measured. The quiet click of turning numbers seemed to echo in the pre-dawn stillness, like the ticking of a clock counting down to something extraordinary. The first lock yielded with surprising ease. 5 digits, 1 to 9, 6 to 2, 4. Chen paused, wondering if it should have been more difficult. The second lock waited patiently, its numbers reflecting the overhead lights like tiny mirrors. His fingers hovered over the dial, second thoughts crowding his mind. A soft click echoed through the room as the second lock released. 8 to 3, 7 to 0, 5. The briefcase remained still, offering no hint of its contents. Chen held his breath, acutely aware of his heart beating against his ribs. With deliberate care, he lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in pristine foam padding, sat a sleek tablet device unlike any he'd seen before. Its surface was perfectly smooth, without any visible buttons or markings. As Chen watched, the screen flickered to life, casting a gentle blue glow across his face. Words appeared, crisp and clear. "Welcome, Officer James Chen. Your initiative is appreciated." His first instinct was to close the briefcase and walk away, but before he could move, more text scrolled across the screen. "Please remain calm. Your selection was not random. We've been watching your career with great interest." Chen glanced at the security cameras, suddenly wondering if they were the only ones observing. The tablet continued its message. "For the past 5 years, you've noticed patterns others have missed. The Martinez cold case, the Riverside warehouse discrepancies, the missing evidence from last month's pharmacy investigation." His mouth went dry. He'd never filed official reports on any of those observations. They were just notes in his personal notebook, hunches he couldn't quite prove. The screen cleared, replaced by new text. "You see connections others ignore, Officer Chen. We need that ability now more than ever." Images began appearing on the screen, newspaper clippings, police reports, photographs. Each one represented a case he thought about but never pursued. He wanted to connect but couldn't justify officially. "Your attention to detail has been noted," the message continued. "Your willingness to look deeper, even now, demonstrates exactly why you were chosen." Chen's police radio crackled softly, making him jump. Just a routine check-in from another officer across town. He realized he'd been holding his breath and forced himself to exhale slowly. The tablet displayed a simple question. "Are you willing to learn more?" Below the text, 2 options appeared. Accept or decline. Return briefcase to original location. Chen thought about his family, his wife teaching high school science, his daughter starting college next year. He thought about his comfortable routine, his planned retirement in 10 years. One touch of the screen could change everything. But then he remembered why he'd become a police officer in the first place. Not for the routine or the retirement plan, but because he believed in finding truth and serving justice. The tablet dimmed slightly, as if sensing his hesitation. A new message appeared. "You have questions. This is good. Curiosity and caution in balance mark the best investigators." More text followed. "If you accept, your first task begins immediately. If you decline, the briefcase will be gone by morning. No consequences, no record of this encounter." Chen checked his watch again. 3:17 a.m. The night felt different now, charged with possibility. Through the window, he could see stars peeking through breaking clouds, as if the sky itself was offering a sign. His training had taught him to follow protocol, to call for backup, to document everything. But his instincts, the same instincts that had solved impossible cases and saved lives, told him this was different. Chen's finger moved toward the screen, his decision crystallizing with each passing second. The tablet's surface was cool to the touch as he made his choice, setting in motion events that would reshape not only his career, but his entire understanding of justice and truth. The screen flickered once more, displaying a final message. "Excellent choice, Officer Chen. Your real work begins now." 3 blocks away from the Portland Police Department's Central Precinct, FBI Director Sarah Martinez sat in a state-of-the-art mobile command center. The vehicle looked like an ordinary delivery van from the outside, but its interior rivaled the most advanced surveillance stations in Washington. "He's made contact," announced technical analyst David Park, his fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. 6 screens displayed different angles of the lost and found room, each showing Officer Chen's interaction with the briefcase in crystal clarity. Martinez leaned forward, her dark eyes focused on the center monitor. At 53, she'd overseen dozens of special recruitment operations, but this one felt different. "Show me his profile again," she requested, though she'd memorized it days ago. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting Chen's service record in the air between them. 15 years on the force. Highest solve rate in the precinct. Perfect disciplinary record. But it was the unofficial notes that had caught her attention, the cases he'd quietly influenced, the patterns he'd spotted that others missed. Running biometric analysis now, Park reported, pulling up a new window. Chen's vital signs scrolled across the screen. Heart rate, breathing patterns, micro-expressions. He's cautious but curious. No signs of distress or panic. Martinez nodded approvingly. Just what we're looking for. How many others have we tested this month? 17 candidates across 12 cities, Park replied, pulling up a national map dotted with glowing markers. Most walked right past the briefcase. 3 called it in immediately. 2 tried to hack it. He paused, checking another screen. Chen's the first to approach it methodically. The night air hummed with possibility as Martinez watched Chen examine the tablet. She designed this recruitment program herself, moving away from traditional methods. In a world of increasing complexity, they needed officers who could think differently, who could see beyond the obvious. Personal background data coming through, announced Lisa Chen, no relation to the officer, their behavioral analyst. His wife, Sarah Chen, teaches advanced chemistry at Lincoln High School. Daughter Michelle starts at Stanford next fall, full academic scholarship. She looked up from her tablet. They're stable, well-respected in their community. Martinez studied the family photos appearing on a side screen. Good people, she murmured. Living good lives. She straightened in her chair. Which makes this next part crucial. Park, initiate phase 2. Park's fingers flew across his keyboard. In the lost and found room, the tablet in Chen's hands began displaying the carefully crafted messages they prepared. Each word was chosen to intrigue rather than alarm, to challenge rather than threaten. Heart rate elevated but steady, Lisa reported, monitoring the biometric feed. He's processing everything exactly as predicted. The psychological profile was spot on. Martinez allowed herself a small smile. In her 30 years with the Bureau, she learned that the best agents weren't always the ones who scored highest on tests or ran fastest on tracks. Sometimes they were quiet observers, people who noticed things others didn't, who asked questions others wouldn't. Time check, she announced, glancing at her watch. 03:17, right on schedule. The van fell silent as they watched Chen contemplate his decision. Years of experience had taught Martinez to read people in these moments. She saw no hesitation in his posture, no fear in his movements, just careful, deliberate consideration. He's going to accept, Lisa predicted, studying her behavioral analytics display. All indicators are positive. As if on cue, Chen's finger moved toward the tablet's screen. Martinez felt the energy in the van shift, the beginning of something important. Contact confirmed, Park announced. Initiating Secure Protocol Alpha 7. Martinez stood, smoothing her jacket. Excellent work, everyone. Officer James Chen just became our most promising candidate in 5 years. She checked her phone, already planning the next phase. Let's show him exactly what he's capable of. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the central precinct as Officer Chen settled into his desk for the day shift. His night of discovery felt almost dreamlike now, but the weight of the tablet in his jacket pocket served as a constant reminder of its reality. His phone buzzed softly. A text from an unknown number. Check today's dispatch reports. Pattern recognition exercise begins now. Chen pulled up the morning's dispatch log on his computer, scanning through dozens of routine calls. At first glance, everything looked normal. Traffic incidents, noise complaints, the usual morning activities of a busy city. Then he noticed something odd. 3 separate noise complaints, all filed at exactly 7:15 a.m., from addresses forming a perfect equilateral triangle on the city map. His cursor hovered over the reports as another text arrived. Good. What else? Looking deeper, Chen spotted more patterns. The traffic incidents created a specific sequence. If you assign numbers to each type of violation, they matched the first 30 digits of pi. His pulse quickened as he realized these weren't random events. Impressive start. The next text read, "Now check your email." Subject line, Annual Budget Review. Chen opened his work email, finding the message buried among routine announcements. The budget spreadsheet looked ordinary enough, columns of numbers, department allocations, standard formatting. But when he looked closer, certain cells caught his attention. The numbers in column G, when read as map coordinates, traced a path through the city's warehouse district. Within those warehouses, he knew there had been a string of unsolved break-ins over the past month. His phone buzzed again. Your instincts are correct. The break-ins are connected, but not in the way you think. Chen glanced around the office. His colleagues went about their normal routines, filling out reports, making calls, sipping coffee. None of them seemed to notice anything unusual about the dispatch logs or budget reports. A new email arrived, this one containing security camera footage from the warehouse district. Most would see only ordinary nighttime scenes, but Chen noticed the patterns in the security guards' patrols, the timing of delivery trucks, the seemingly random power fluctuations. Think bigger, the next text prompted. What are you really seeing? Chen grabbed a notebook, jotting down times, coordinates, and sequences. The numbers danced in his mind, forming connections he wouldn't have seen just yesterday. The warehouse break-ins weren't crimes. They were tests, just like the briefcase had been. His phone lit up. Now you're understanding. Ready for the next level. Before he could reply, Officer Rodriguez stopped by his desk. Hey Chen, you okay? You've been staring at those reports pretty intensely. Chen smiled naturally, years of experience helping him maintain his composure. Just noticed some interesting patterns in the noise complaints. Probably nothing. Rodriguez shrugged. Always the detective. Don't forget about the morning briefing. Starts in 5 minutes. As Rodriguez walked away, Chen's phone delivered one final message. Perfect response. Maintaining normal routines is essential. The briefing will contain your next set of clues. Remember, patterns within patterns. Chen stood, straightening his uniform. The morning sunlight caught the badge on his chest, and for a moment, he saw his reflection in the window. The same officer he always been, but now part of something larger, something hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. Walking toward the briefing room, he felt the tablet's reassuring weight in his pocket. His mind was sharper, his senses more attuned to the subtle rhythms and patterns around him. Whatever came next, he was ready. The briefing room door opened, and Chen took his usual seat, notepad ready. But now he knew to look deeper, to see beyond the obvious. As the sergeant began speaking, Chen's trained eye started picking out the hidden messages woven into another seemingly ordinary day. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filled Pioneer Coffee House as Officer Chen settled into his usual corner table. After a week of solving hidden puzzles and following subtle clues, his regular afternoon coffee break felt like an anchor to normalcy. The bell above the door chimed as a woman in a charcoal gray suit entered. She moved with quiet confidence, her silver-streaked dark hair caught in the afternoon sunlight. Chen recognized her immediately from his years of law enforcement briefings, FBI Director Sarah Martinez. She ordered a plain coffee and, to Chen's carefully concealed surprise, walked directly to his table. Mind if I join you, Officer Chen? Her voice was warm but professional. Please. Chen gestured to the empty chair, his mind racing through possibilities. Was this a coincidence? A test? Part of the larger pattern. Martinez settled into the chair, placing her coffee cup precisely on the table. The patterns in the warehouse break-ins, she said without preamble. How did you spot them so quickly? Chen took a measured sip of his coffee, buying time to choose his words carefully. The security guard's rotations seemed too perfect. In real patrols, there's always some variation. A guard stops to tie their shoe, checks their phone, pauses to chat with a colleague. These patrols had none of that human element. A smile touched Martina's lips. Most officers wouldn't notice such details, but then you're not most officers, are you? She pulled out her phone, displaying a familiar sequence of numbers. Tell me about these. The traffic violations from last week, Chen replied. They'd followed the first 30 digits of pi. At first, I thought it might be coincidence, but then I noticed the timestamps created a Fibonacci sequence. Martinez nodded approvingly, and the noise complaints. A triangulation pattern pointing to. Chen paused, suddenly understanding. This coffee shop, that's why you're here. This entire week has been leading to this moment. Very good, Martinez set her phone down. We've been watching your progress, Officer Chen. You've exceeded our highest expectations. You see patterns others miss, but more importantly, you understand their implications. Through the window, Chen noticed a delivery van parked across the street, the same one he'd spotted near the precinct several times this week. The mobile command center, he said quietly. You've been monitoring everything. We had to be certain, Martinez confirmed. This program requires individuals with exceptional abilities and unquestionable integrity. You possess both. A barista called out another order, the normal sounds of the coffee shop continuing around their extraordinary conversation. What exactly is this program, Director? Martinez leaned forward slightly. We're building a new kind of task force, one that operates in the spaces between traditional law enforcement. The patterns you've been solving, they're echoes of real criminal enterprises getting more sophisticated every day. She pulled out a small data card. This contains details of 3 cases we're currently tracking. Patterns hidden within international shipping manifests, anomalies in global financial transactions, communications buried in ordinary internet traffic. We need people who can see these patterns and understand their significance. Ken thought about the past week, the puzzles, the clues, the growing awareness of patterns everywhere. The briefcase was just the beginning, wasn't it? Consider it your entrance exam, Martinez smiled. One you passed with flying colors. The real question is, are you ready for what comes next? Outside, the Portland afternoon continued its normal rhythm. People hurried past, caught up in their own lives, unaware of the deeper currents moving beneath the surface of their world. Chen looked at his badge, thinking about his oath to protect and serve. What exactly would I be protecting as part of this task force? Martinez stood, leaving the data card on the table. Everything, she said simply. Sometimes the greatest threats are the ones hidden in plain sight. We need people who can see them. She paused at the table's edge. Take 24 hours to think it over. If you're interested, the card contains instructions for your next step. Later that evening, Chen sat in his home office. The data card Director Martinez had given him resting on his desk. His daughter Michelle was at volleyball practice, and his wife Sarah was grading chemistry tests downstairs. The ordinary sounds of his home life provided a stark contrast to the extraordinary decision before him. He inserted the card into his secure tablet. The screen immediately came to life, displaying 3 separate case files. The first showed a series of shipping containers moving through ports across the Pacific Northwest. To untrained eyes, their movements appeared random. But Chen saw the pattern immediately. They were creating a sophisticated relay system, each container's path precisely timed and coordinated. The second file contained financial records from various tech startups. Hidden within the standard transactions were microscopic anomalies, fractions of cents being redirected through a maze of accounts. The numbers danced like constellations, forming a map of something larger. The third file made him lean forward. It showed social media posts from across the country, seemingly unconnected. But when Chen looked closer, he noticed how certain phrases repeated at specific intervals, how random photos contained barely perceptible markers in their backgrounds. His tablet chimed softly. A new message appeared. These are just samples. The real patterns go deeper. Ready to see more? Chen heard his wife's footsteps on the stairs and quickly secured the tablet. Sarah appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of tea. You've been quiet tonight, she said, setting 1 cup beside him. Everything okay at work? He smiled, grateful for her presence. Just thinking about a new opportunity, he replied truthfully. Something that could make a real difference. Sarah studied his face with the insight of 20 years of marriage. The kind of difference you've always wanted to make, she asked softly. Before Chen could respond, his tablet displayed another message. Family support is crucial for this role. Complete transparency with immediate family is authorized. Chen took a deep breath. Remember how you always say I see patterns others miss? He pulled out a chair for her. Well, someone noticed. Over the next hour, Chen shared everything. The briefcase, the tests, the meeting with Director Martinez. Sarah listened intently, asking occasional questions that showed her scientific mind at work. So this task force, she said finally, it's about preventing problems before they become crimes. Exactly, Chen nodded. Martinez says we're living in an age where the biggest threats aren't always obvious. They're hidden in data streams, coded in ordinary transactions, concealed in plain sight. His tablet activated again, displaying a map of the country with glowing points of light. These are other candidates, the text explained. People like you scatter across the nation, each protecting their own regions while contributing to the larger mission. Sarah squeezed his hand. You've always seen things differently. Even Michelle notices it. How do you spot patterns in her volleyball games, predict plays before they happen? The tablet showed one final message. Your family's support is noted and appreciated. If you accept, your first official briefing begins tomorrow. Your unique perspective will help protect not just your community, but communities across the nation. Chen looked around his home office, at the family photos, his daughter's art projects, the life he and Sarah had built together. This won't be like my regular police work, he said carefully. Sarah smiled. When has anything about you been regular? She stood, kissing his cheek. You see the world in patterns. Maybe it's time to use that gift on a bigger scale. After she left, Chen picked up his tablet one last time. The screen showed a simple question. Ready to begin. He thought about the patterns he'd seen throughout his career, the connections others missed, the chances to make a real difference. His finger hovered over the screen for just a moment before he made his choice. I'm ready, he typed, and somewhere in the growing darkness, a new pattern began to form. The next 2 weeks transformed Chen's understanding of his world. His morning briefings now included encrypted data streams from across the country. What looked like ordinary police reports to his colleagues revealed intricate patterns to his trained eye. Today, he sat in a sleek conference room at the FBI's Portland field office, surrounded by holographic displays. Director Martinez stood at the front, addressing a small group of specially selected officers from different jurisdictions. The shipping container pattern Officer Chen identified last week led to something bigger, Martinez announced, bringing up a 3D map of the Pacific coast. Thanks to his analysis, we've identified similar movements in Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Chen watched as colored lines connected various ports, forming a complex web of activity. He'd spotted the initial pattern, but seeing it expand across the entire coast was breathtaking. His morning coffee sat forgotten as he absorbed the larger picture. Officer Chen, Martinez called. Would you walk us through how you made the connection? Standing up, Chen moved to the central display. It started with timing discrepancies, he explained, highlighting specific container movements. Every third container would delay exactly 17 minutes during transfer. In isolation, it looked like normal port traffic, but when you map it across multiple locations, he gestured and the holographic display shifted, revealing a hidden pattern of coordinated movements. The other officers leaned forward, seeing for the first time what Chen had noticed immediately. Remarkable, commented Captain Rivera from San Francisco PD. We've been watching these ports for months and never saw the connection. After the briefing, Martinez pulled Chen aside. There's something else you should see. She led him to a smaller room where several screens displayed social media feeds. Remember those posts you flagged last week? The pattern's evolving. Chen studied the screens, his mind automatically sorting through the stream of images and text. The intervals between repeated phrases have changed, he noted. They're adapting, using a new sequence. Exactly, Martinez nodded approvingly. We need to stay ahead of them. Your team leaves for Seattle in an hour. Wheels up from Portland International. Captain Rivera's unit will meet you there. Back at his desk, Chen quickly packed his tablet and necessary equipment. Officer Rodriguez walked by, noticing the travel bag. Another special assignment? He asked with a knowing smile. Just following up on some leads, Chen replied casually, maintaining his cover story. In the past 2 weeks, he perfected the art of being present yet separate, involved yet discreet. His phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Good luck in Seattle. Michelle says to catch the bad guys using math. Chen smiled, grateful for his family's support and understanding. They'd adapted to his new role with remarkable grace, accepting the sudden trips and late-night analysis sessions as part of their new normal. The drive to the airport gave him time to process the morning's revelations. Each pattern he discovered seemed to lead to larger ones, like ripples expanding across a pond. One had started with a mysterious briefcase had opened his eyes to a hidden world of interconnected data points and subtle signals. At the airport, a private FBI jet waited on the tarmac. As Chen boarded, he noticed the pilot checking flight coordinates that formed their own peculiar pattern, an indirect route that would be harder to track or predict. Ready for Seattle? Asked Special Agent Taylor, his new partner for field operations. Word is you figured out something big. Chen settled into his seat, reviewing the latest data on his tablet. The pattern's still forming, he replied, watching new information stream across his screen. But I think we're close to seeing the whole picture. The jet engines hummed to life as Chen spotted another hidden sequence in the data. He learned that in his new role, every detail mattered. Every anomaly could be significant. As the plane took off into the cloudy Portland sky, he was already deep in analysis, searching for the next crucial pattern that others had missed. 1 year later, Chen stood at the podium in the FBI Academy's main auditorium in Quantico, Virginia. The room was filled with eager faces, a new generation of law enforcement officers selected for their unique abilities to see beyond the obvious. A year ago, Chen began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. I found a briefcase in my precincts, lost and found. He smiled as several audience members exchanged knowing looks. Some of you might have found similar briefcases or noticed unusual patterns in your daily routines. The original briefcase sat on display beside him, now a symbol of the program's success. Its polished surface caught the light, reminding Chen of that fateful night that had changed everything. In the past 12 months, our network has identified and prevented 17 major security threats. He continued, bringing up a holographic display of interconnected data points. Each of you was chosen because you see the world differently. You notice what others miss. Director Martinez watched from the back of the room, nodding approvingly. The program she'd envisioned had exceeded all expectations, largely thanks to Chen's contributions. His methods had become the foundation for training new recruits. Let me show you something, Chen said, activating his tablet. The auditorium's screens filled with seemingly random data, social media posts, shipping manifests, financial transactions. Take 30 seconds. Tell me what you see. The room fell silent as the candidates studied the information. A young officer from Miami raised her hand first. The social media timestamps form a Fibonacci sequence. Good, Chen nodded. What else? The shipping routes called out a detective from Chicago. They're mirroring star constellations. Chen smiled. They were proving his point, each seeing different aspects of the larger pattern. This is what we do, he explained. We find the signal in the noise, the order in the chaos. But more importantly, we work together, combining our unique perspectives. He brought up another display, showing a map of the United States dotted with glowing points of light. Each light represents one of us. Alone, we can spot local patterns. Together, we can see national and global ones. In the front row, he spotted his daughter Michelle, now home from her first year at Stanford, beaming with pride. She'd inherited his gift for patterns, applying it to her studies in data science. Sarah sat beside her, still his strongest supporter. The briefcase that started my journey wasn't just a test, Chen continued. It was an invitation to be part of something larger than ourselves, to protect not just our communities, but our entire way of life from threats that most people never see. He gestured to the original surveillance footage from the lost and found room, now declassified for training purposes. Every one of you had a moment like this, a moment when you chose to look deeper, to question, to investigate. That's what makes you special. The screen shifted to show their latest success, a complex network of digital threats they'd identified and neutralized before any damage could occur. This is the future of law enforcement, Chen explained. Not just responding to crimes, but preventing them by seeing the patterns that precede them. As the presentation concluded, Chen watched the candidates talking excitedly among themselves. He remembered his own early days, learning to trust his unique way of seeing the world. Now he was helping others do the same. Director Martinez joined him at the podium. "Excellent presentation," she said warmly. "Hard to believe it's only been a year." Chen nodded, watching the next generation of pattern analysts discussing what they'd learned. "The patterns keep getting more complex," he observed. "But so do we." "Ready for your next assignment?" Martinez asked, holding up a tablet displaying a new series of anomalies. Chen smiled, already seeing connections forming in the data. "Always," he replied. "The patterns never stop, they just wait to be discovered." Outside the auditorium, the world continued its complex dance of interconnected events and hidden meanings. But now, thanks to Chen and others like him, someone was watching, understanding, and protecting, one pattern at a time.